See you all here, commissioners and public. I will now call to order the Wednesday, February 26, 2025, City of Battle Creek Planning Commission meeting. Can we get a roll call for attendance?
Commissioner Hughes?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Godfrey?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Commissioner Morris?
Here.
Commissioner Dennison? Here. Commissioner Moten?
Here.
And Commissioner White's absent. Mayor Banky?
Here.
Thank you. On to approval of minutes, this being the December 18, 2024 meeting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the minutes be approved as presented.
Support.
Second.
It's been moved and supported. Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Minutes have been approved. Next on the agenda, any correspondence?
No correspondence?
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No additions, no deletions.
Perfect. All right, now we are on to public hearings. As a reminder to all, with public hearings, we'll hear from the staff, we'll hear from the applicant, then open the floor for public comments. We ask that when coming forward, you state your name and address, and please complete the sign-in sheet. Once comments are completed, we'll close the public hearing. If you want to comment on something not specific to the public hearing, you will be provided time to do so later in the agenda, and we will take comments at that time. As a reminder, commissioners, the role of this body today is to hold a public hearing on the rezoning, review the proposed changes, and put forth a recommendation to the City Commission. Any change recommended by the Planning Commission must be approved by the City Commission. With that, I would like to start. I do not have, to my knowledge, a conflict of interest on our public hearing today, but I do want to make it known that in 2018, 2019, I did list this property for sale. I am a licensed real estate agent, but there is no financial interest. The agreement is long been expired, and I have no involvement with the petition before us today. So, Marcel, is there any concern there? I have none. Is there any comments or questions from commissioners? All right. Seeing that, I will open the public hearing for consideration of rezoning 80 North 20th Street. This is a petition from Titus LLC, specifically Michael Gothberg, requesting the rezoning of property located at 80 North 20th Street from its existing R1B single-family residential district to T3 neighborhood commercial district. Staff report, please.
Thank you. The applicant has entered into a purchase agreement with Bronson Battle Creek Hospital, the owner of the property. The applicant before the Planning Commission is requesting a rezoning without conditions from the R1B zoning designation to the T3 zoning designation. This type of rezoning proposal does not require a site plan be submitted with the application, and even if one were submitted, it would not restrict the applicant from submitting completely different plans in the future if this rezoning were approved. The property is approximately 16.54 acres, which under the R1B zoning designation would allow by right for a typical single-family residential style neighborhood with up to 143 single-family homes with individual lots. Under the proposed rezoning, T3, up to 330 dwelling units could be developed by right in a way of single-family units, duplex units, or townhouse-type dwellings. The term by right means that if a rezoning like this were to be approved, that the applicant could either, under the current zoning, R1B, could submit a plan for a 143 single-family home development, and it would be submitted to the city staff, and they would approve it if it met all the requirements, and this would not require input from the community. If it were to be rezoned to the T3, the same would apply. Anything that was allowed by right under the T3 zone would be allowed to be submitted in a site plan. It would go directly to city staff. They would review it for compliance with the TZ rezoning designation, and if it met, it would be approved for, to move forward for construction. That being said, the city staff understands that this property has been vacant for a long time and that some type of residential development would benefit the community in the future. But we also recognize that it has been vacant for a long time, and there are a lot of residents that live in close proximity to this property that probably somewhere between the R1B and the T3 zoning would find some type of residential development that would be appealing to them as well as be good for the community. And under the current application, it is a straight rezoning without conditions. And staff, for several reasons that were listed in the staff report, feel that the difference between the R1B and the T3, if it were to allow to be developed at full capacity, would not necessarily be compatible with this neighborhood and the surrounding uses. However, and we have recommended in the staff report that the Planning Commission deny this application as it's in front of you tonight. However, a conditional rezoning, if this were recommended for denial tonight, a conditional rezoning could be submitted by the applicant at any time during this process, but it would always have to come back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Staff has had a conversation with the applicant, and they'll speak to what their decision is, but staff would be happy to work with the residents and the potential developer to find out what their concerns are and see if there's a happy medium between there and allow the applicant to continue forward with this property without being fully denied. With that being said, I would be happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any technical or clarifying questions of the commissioners at this time for the city staff? Commissioner Godfrey?
We're noted in here that the presentation was made to the NPC, and we have the minutes of the NPC, but there were no suggestions to either for or against by the NPC as listed in their minutes. Have we followed that up? Do we have any recommendation from the NPC?
We did not get a specific recommendation because they did not have a quorum. So they basically provided the minutes as what the conversation was. And not only that conversation, but staff has received several calls from people concerned, not necessarily that they don't want a development there, but concerned that a development could go there without any understanding of what that development could be. There were a lot of questions. I don't think there was a significant number of residents from that area that attended that meeting, unfortunately, and so that was not really a good indication of the residents in that area.
This is a really good learning experience for our citizens in Battle Creek, that if there is an action within an NPC, they should try to get enough people at that meeting so that there can be a recommendation for approval or disapproval to assist the Planning Commission in making their decisions.
Very good.
Commissioner Gray?
Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate on the the statement that you made regarding the number of calls that were received. It seems like those same concerns were being voiced in the MPC discussion regarding not knowing what's going to ultimately take place on that space. Can you give an idea when you say several, did you say it wasn't significant enough as far as the numbers? Or because just trying to get an idea of the scope that came in of concerns, because I don't see a summary
Yeah.
of any of those calls or emails that may have come in.
Right, and the calls that I received were mostly from people that were going to gather the neighbors and wanted to know specifically why the application did not provide a site plan. And so basically, the explanation was, unfortunately, it does not require one, and I suggested they attend the Neighborhood Planning Council meetings. So there was mostly conversations specific to clarify why there was not more detail, and that the applicant was going to the Neighborhood Planning Council to offer some description, but that it did not necessarily mean that that's what would end up there, because they would not be held to that plan under a straight rezoning.
And were they asked, was a recommendation for both the planning, the Neighborhood Planning Council and the Planning Commission meeting, or just the one?
No, for both.
It was for
Yeah,
both.
they were already aware of the Planning Commission and were just needing more understanding why, what our notice process is and why there wasn't a site plan.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, I was wondering about the unit size. I caught that if it got changed, we could go up to 330 units. Was that what the maximum was for that? What was the one, when it was a 1B, or currently a 1B?
1B, I believe it was 148.
Can I
Let me-
quickly,
Let me look at the notes I have here.
my clarifying question
Or
might
43.
provide some context here. So previously, before consumers purchased and split the southern portion, I believe it was 16 acres. The existing
Okay.
parcel, I believe, is 13.42 acres, to my knowledge.
Thank you. That's
So
not-
that would result in the 20 units per acre, 268 unit potential.
Thank you.
That would be under 268 under the new zoning or the current?
Yes,
In
under the
T3.
proposed zoning, T3.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for that clarification. One other question is that without a site plan or any type of knowing how many units we're going to have, how much traffic or congestion would we have in that area, adding that many units in that area?
You know, that's something that we typically look at when a site plan is submitted, but in talking with several of the residents here, if this application is denied tonight and we work with the applicant and the residents, that is some information that we suggested that we would talk about, like if we can get from the Department of Public Works a range, like if it were the lowest density to the highest density, so we could kind of interpolate in between to
And I-
see what would an acceptable.
Yeah, and I know there's schools nearby and other facilities that have young
Right.
citizens that use that area, so I was just thinking of the
Yes.
safety of that, under a conditional type of change. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I had one more, just clarifying that conditions cannot be placed on a rezone, a straight rezone.
Correct. The only conditions that can be part of a rezoning have to be given by the applicant.
Okay.
So that's why staff is recommending that this particular application as a straight rezoning be denied tonight.
But
And
a conditional rezoning request, we could place conditions on.
no, the only conditions that can be placed on a conditional rezoning have to be placed by the applicant. And in speaking with the applicant, we discussed having the ability to hear what the residents are concerned about and what their threshold of capacity would be, and allowing them to present an agreement based on that conversation. But it would be, it would be their conditions to offer, and the Planning Commission and City Commission to recommend or approve or deny.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that if the conversation with the residents and the planning commission is going in a direction that they feel that they want to amend, they can amend the conditions as well.
Okay, so if if there's a conditional rezoning application, conditionally rezoning it to T3, if all the conditions were met and it got rezoned, let's say they sell it, the new owner could do anything essentially in the T3 district. There's no limitations to that.
No, not true. The conditional rezoning would go with the property. There are deadlines. So basically, there's the ability, it's only good for 1 year. The applicant has the ability to extend that for, I believe, 3 different 1-year periods.
Okay.
If it's not extended, it reverts to the underlying zoning.
Okay.
So that's conditional rezonings that I've experienced have been very beneficial when there's an area that's maybe not quite right for the underlying zoning, but not quite right for the next zoning up, to kind of meet that gap.
Okay. Thank you. All right, seeing no more questions, we will now go to the applicant. Please state your name, address, and relationship to the applicant if you are a representative. We would appreciate if you could explain your request and present the reasons why you should feel it should be approved.
Okay. I'm Michael Gothberg. My address is 121 West Michigan Avenue, Unit G, if you're going to stop by. But it's the Anson Building. So our our request, I guess, was based on the idea that we haven't bought the property yet. We've been working with them for 1.5 years to kind of decide to find a balance on the property that, even for taking it over, had a lot of old hindrances, I guess, basically. There was conditional use that it had to be a hospital and some things, and so that's kind of why they backed off from selling it in the first place. It was for sale, but that was holding it back from being that. So we kind of took a chance on. I was driving. We've been looking for places that seemed like they could use it, and instead of building way out, we thought if we infill a little bit better into the city, maybe that's more convenient for people than that. So that was kind of our idea. And I drove past this property, hundreds of times, and it sort of became an issue to like, well, maybe we should call. Found out who owned it, got a hold of them. They're like, oh, somebody's interested, and then they went through the process and worked out a number and whatever for the to make a proposal, and then the deed restrictions, is the word I'm looking for, came into play, and it was like, well, we're not really planning to build a hospital, so let's see what that can be. So they took the time, and they did what they had to do for that, and that was all kind of on their attorneys. And so now it's reopened back up for us, the opportunity to buy, to proceed with our due diligence time. And in looking at it, it doesn't really behoove us to, and I'm not sure it's really that well suited for building new residential lots like it's zoned, just because I'm a builder. I've been doing that for 25, probably almost 30 years now. And new homes cost a lot to build individually, and there's a lot of expense in that. So I don't see it financially feasible, or we didn't see it even 143 would be insane to try to pack a bunch of houses on that property, or whatever the number is, 120. So we didn't see that as a very practical use to just take it as it is. We kind of all along thought we would have to maybe do some kind of multifamily or something. And then in the discussions with the city, it was like, well, T3 is a good idea, or is a good option for that kind of thing. So that kind of led us down that path. And, it's mostly about trying to find the right balance of it. But we don't really want to take over the property and purchase it as an R1B with maybe they'll change it, maybe they won't, because then it really just stays almost as useless to us as it is to Bronson to just buy it. And really, there's not a lot of value in that. So for us to make it something that was worth having, it needed to be something more dense. T3 was a recommendation because there was some options of being able to put some retail use, not a Best Buy, but something that people nearby could use, some smaller things. If we just went multifamily, you really can't do that. So that was kind of in the plan. along a lot of our discussions, we've had discussions with Cody and different other people about, trying to make this a well-rounded piece of property and not just that. But obviously, we don't own it, so we weren't going to go to the multi-tens of thousands of dollars of expense on a gamble that presented a bunch of plans for something we can't even build. We don't even know if we could build. So we just really didn't. So that's kind of what led us into this. And the idea was, let's find out if we can get it rezoned to that T3 and start there. We really have no problem with a conditional use because I don't believe what we're asking to do is that outrageous. We don't even probably want to do the things that the concerns are. We're not trying to jam the neighborhood. We're not trying to crowd the traffic. None of that makes any value in what we do. So that was already the thing. It was just, our process was, well, we don't really have a plan yet because we don't own it. And we're not going to, we can't invest a lot of things. We know we'd like to build some multifamily and, or not, I say some, whatever would fit. Of course, the maximum is a large number, 270 or 260. If that can be reasonably placed there and the traffic isn't insane and it doesn't cause a lot of problems with utilities and things, then that's cool, that's the number. We just don't know that until we, go forward. So and then now, I wasn't sure how it would gauge anyway. We were just trying, this is where we've been kind of at this, we're a little bit hesitant to kind of get information from everyone. We want to get all the information, but we are in kind of a time crunch of like, well, we got to decide if we're going to buy it or not. So it's kind of both of those things. So the idea of having local resident input does not scare me. We aren't asking for something that's impossible. I know it's just a little unclear right now because it's unclear to us because we can't say, oh, we definitely want this and find out, well, we can't do that even if we wanted to. And so there's a lot of effort to go through to do that, and we were just trying to gauge things. So in talking with Darcy and we had a meeting with stand back. We had a meeting with them, and it was, like, well, let's try this T3 request because it's more straightforward. And it's kind of hard to make a request for conditional zoning on a property you don't have to do this thing until we kind of know where everybody's at. So that got us back in the door. But like I said, I think our decision has been in conversations with this, that we have no issue at all with setting up real community meeting or neighborhood meeting or whatever it needs to be. Obviously, just going to the neighborhood meeting was just let's see if we can get some feedback on what we need to do here. But we probably do need, obviously, a more elaborate version of it, and that's what Darcy said they would help us facilitate some things like that to put something together with the actual people who live around it and have a concern about it. Our intent is not to cause their lives more chaos. That's not the intent, but try to benefit something for the city and for residential uses and things like that. It's good for us to do it. If that's not what anybody wants, if it turns out, hey, we all hate this idea, we don't want anything there, we'd like a park or an empty plate of grass that just sits there, so be it. That's where we go. We just won't take it. And it'll sit there and continue to be what it is. That's fine. But we were just trying to find some way to go forward with it, and I think this is where we are. Cody has some input on how we would probably put things together, because we've been talking to him about site planning and things like that. We've talked with him for a couple months on and off about this part of it, but he was going to say a few words on that too, if that's all right.
If Cody can, yeah.
All right, my name's Cody Newman. I'm with Driven Design. We're located at 117 West Michigan Avenue downtown. We did just have some preliminary conversations. We have not put together a formal site plan on this. We thought that this site was a great site suited for residential. We have a housing shortage in the city. Everyone knows that at this point. We need more housing. The reason that we thought that the T3 district was the most appetizing, this has been a long time commercial property. It just recently in 2020, when we went through the rezoning process, it was changed to residential. On 20th Street, a significant portion of the businesses along here are commercial businesses. So that's just why we looked at this. It's a 4-lane road. Any commercial would be facing 20th Street. It wouldn't be towards the residential side of it. We had just preliminarily kind of sketched out that 3 kind of buildings could fit on this. They were kind of thinking they could build 1 at a time just to get some density. We had talked, again, preliminarily about 90 units per building. So that'd be 270 total, which is under the 300 and some threshold. Sorry, we keep forgetting the specific numbers, but so it was under that threshold, and it would keep it all in the northwest corner, so of 20th Street and Highland, Highland right there, Eldred. So it would be in that corner, is where there'd kind of be like, a building there, maybe just an all residential building if we do get to the final building, on the side there. But the two along 20th Street, the intent is there could be potentially some sort of commercial on the first floor and residential up above, a typical mixed-use building, restaurant, coffee shop, grocery store, again, things that are already found along that 20th Street corridor, just kind of bringing that in there. There's 4 lanes of traffic. There is a retention pond on site right now. That would obviously stay as part of this. That's a community kind of retention pond, so that there already is stormwater plans for this. There's a little like wooded area there. Again, that could stay. We talked about having a little park around that that'd be accessible to any of the residents as well. So it'd be kind of a community park and then just kind of densifying that versus if they did go the housing route, obviously that gets split into a lot and no one gets access to it other than the people that are building homes on that. This was just a way to kind of make this more of a community space and more central with that, with hopefully a few businesses in there along the area.
Perfect. Anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, so the overall, basically what we did kind of come at it from a smart angle, but we just didn't provide, and we didn't have plans to provide because we really aren't there yet. And I felt like that was kind of a commitment to say, this is what we're doing. And then we know that we might not buy the property, we might not do it. So it was kind of, that wasn't the angle we came from. Now, I think if we're very interested in, having the input, because obviously it doesn't hurt to have 80% of the people who surround you being like, this sounds like a great idea, we're good with it. 100%, it's awesome, but even if it's not that. So our idea was to do something like that still. I just didn't have anything great to present. I don't want it to seem like we were trying to withhold some information that we have. We just weren't ready for it. Had we owned this property already, obviously we would have already come with something like that to ask for this because it would have been justifiable, but we just haven't yet. But I'm hoping that we can put together something in the near future and, we can resubmit in the other way. So I think that was kind of our hope. But.
Okay. Any questions or any questions of commissioners of the applicant? Commissioner Godfrey.
Cody, about how many square feet per apartment?
It's early,
I know
to
that.
estimate that.
You
We
have a
were
range?
estimating a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments is what we were thinking at this point. So the 1 bedrooms would be 750 square feet approximately. The 2 bedrooms would probably be 1,000, 1,200, something in there.
Thank you.
It wasn't meant to be really high-end housing. This also isn't just a straight affordable housing either. It's just, kind of market rate for the area.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners of the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the public. Are there any public comments for rezoning 80 North 20th Street? If so, please come up, state your name and address. This is a time to share your support, concerns, or suggestions. Let us know what aspects of the proposal are most concerning or what modifications you would recommend. Please remember that this time is for public input, not back and forth debate. Thank you for signing in.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Husa. May I respond to a statement that was given about the NPC meeting?
Of course.
Okay. It said there weren't a lot of people at the NPC meeting. Rick Barnes and I were there, and we told our people we would represent them. Michael was very helpful and gave us all the detail that he could at the time, and there was quite a bit of discussion, so it all went back to our neighborhood. This happens to be my neighborhood right here. Even though I am talking today, I hope that they will get up, and everybody has a little bit different opinion, and I did not mix mine with theirs, knowing that they may have something good that could come through here today. Our goal in being in the Planning Commission meeting is to make sure we do not degrade our neighborhoods in the process of developing the hospital property, especially since our neighborhood is in the middle of the commercial growth from both Columbia Avenue and the intersection of Gogowak and 20th Street. 20th Street has been a major corridor for many years. What do we mean by degrading our neighborhood? A neighborhood should have low traffic, low noise level, no obtrusive lighting, good security, affordable, well cared for homes, grounds, streets, and sidewalks, all conducive to good family living. Several of the people in the area attended the neighborhood meeting on February 13th. Our job was to get adequate information on what was the plan for the property and then provide it to all of our neighbors so they could be ready to make comments in this February 26th Planning Commission meeting. There were no handouts that we could copy. The detail received was a minimum of units to be 100, and I've already heard it's a lot more what they're talking about. 3 buildings were to be 60 feet by 100 feet, and we were aware at that time from Michael that this was a pending sale. And we're here to go from T3 to go to T3 zoning, which includes the density of the property and commercial. The density for T3 is 20 units per acre, and there's 16 acres, so the max is 330 units. I'm not sure that the neighbors in the area will be able to perceive the scope and size of this project without visual aids. With 100 units, you are looking around 200 people, 100 to 200 vehicles in the parking lot with associated traffic and activity. I would think that a traffic signal would be needed at 20th Street in Eldred, and I think we're even thinking it should be done right now, but that's not for here. I cannot perceive of an apartment complex in the area that size currently. And what I did, I took a look at apartments that would be typical. Forest Hills on South Capitol has 136 units. Liberty Commons on Carl Street has 120. Fairlane Apartments in Springfield on Avenue A has 244 units. Mingus Creek Village, which is 66, and Glen Cross Road has 192 units. Brookside out in Springfield on Dickman Road has 408 units. Windtree Townhomes on Dickman Road have 160 units. So what they're doing, if they go the full amount, they just won't be, they'll be in the top number of apartment units that we have in the city. They'll be right up there. So it will be a big complex. We understand the business case for Stephen and Michael. With 100 units, you're looking at $100,000 per month revenue based on $1,000 rent. When you compare that with a single-family density with the current zoning of, it's actually 16 acres, but you're talking roughly 50-some families living in that property if it were single-family residential. Please give due consideration to the welfare of our neighborhood in your thoughts and decisions regarding the use of the property at 80 North 20th Street. And I would encourage my neighbors to come up if they would like to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Thank you for signing in.
Good evening, Rick Barnes, 177 Cameron Drive. We've discussed with our neighbors and stuff, we're not opposed to something happening on that property. We're not saying don't bring anything in. We'd like to, like what she said, put in the conditional permit.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
Okay. We're not opposed to having something done in that neighborhood. We just don't want to see complex from wall to wall sides full up, because you can see right in their houses that live on Cameron Drive. We haven't had anything really in writing from these guys, and I understand why do it when you don't own it yet, okay? So I support that. That's your problem. But I would like to negotiate with you guys and the city and get something that everybody can live with. Wrecks at the corner of Highland and 20th Street, for some reason, they're happening quite often. I was going to bring it to the city before this, but we talked at the neighborhood council the other day. There's been a wreck since then at that corner. Something's wrong with the design of it, because you don't have that kind of wrecks on 20th elsewhere. So the traffic's a little bit of a concern. But like I said, we would go along definitely with a conditional type permit to what can be regulated, because if they bought it today and built the 3 units they're showing, and it gets rezoned, the new owners can do whatever they want. There's no helping our neighborhood that way. So like I said, we're not a group trying to oppose something. We'd just like to have some input into what's going on there. And right now, most of our group here, we're scared because of the unknown. We have not seen anything in writing. Like I said, I don't blame you guys for not having it in writing because you don't own it. But to help us, if it could go along the system farther, to where we could get the conditional things into the thing, we would appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Thank you for signing in.
Good afternoon. My name's Chuck Cherney. I'm at 41 Linwood. I'm here representing the owner of one of the adjoining parcels where we had a 60-unit senior facility that burned down, and he owns the rest of the senior housing next to it. What his response was after I told him, and I did go to the neighborhood council meeting, was that, and I just learned tonight that you don't need to have a site plan, but the question was a site plan and what could be built there and what could not be built there. I mean, is it going to be a parcel of land that's owned multifamily and then put out for sale to whatever? I did talk to Mike after the meeting, and we talked about these 3 buildings. We talked about 100 to 200 units, and it's kind of, and I understand it's a work in progress. I think the other concern, in my experience in real estate, is that pond back there handles a lot of water. And I've seen much smaller things than that get involved, and I think there ought to be some kind of report may be the wrong word, but some kind of agreement from the DEQ that this can be done, because there will be additional asphalt draining water into there, and it's going to be coming from all 4 directions. So I think, well, I know my recommendation was to maybe table this request and let the board ask for some of these details and get a response from the DEQ, get a response on what their thoughts are, and some kind of idea of a preliminary site plan, which I know is an expense. Everybody's done it in real estate, though, and kind of lay out a number. It's a tough business to be in today. Construction costs are expensive, but I just think you can't go into this speculative without having a few answers. And since the approval is not binding on anybody else, particularly, or not binding after a year, maybe, I think the idea of asking to table it for 30 days, get some kind of preliminary feel for what's going on, would be a reasonable request, and that's what was asked to pass on from the people from Valparaiso, which have a large investment on Territorial Road there, abutting this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? This young lady here was coming up first. I'll call you up afterwards.
Well, I'm glad you're here, so thank you.
Thank you for signing in.
Hi, my name is Sharon Heisler. I live at 173 Cameron Drive. And I really just want to reiterate what Rick has said and what Mark has said. I've lived on Cameron Drive for over 30 years, and it's, at one time, Lakeview General Hospital was our neighbor, rather quiet neighbor. That building closed, they tore that down, and really it kind of became a green space. So I watch every night, I watch neighbors walking their animals over in that lot. I watch kids sled down the hill. I watch kids play soccer over there. It turns into a green acre zone because I watch deer wander and feed over there, and they tend to wander through our neighborhood, which is always kind of nice. So it's always nice to be known as a quiet neighborhood. And I want to reiterate again that I'm concerned about the higher density of traffic. Again, we talked about 170 some apartments, and now we're talking over 250 cars going in and out all times of the night, and the noise level, the parking areas. I'm concerned about the retail, the conditional part that we talked about earlier, I think is important to us because we would like to see a site plan. We would like to know where those buildings are going to be put so they're not against some of the residents' houses. They're not overlooking into our backyards. So I'm just essentially agreeing with everything we've talked about, and that we need to make sure that if there is a provisional zone, that we need to see some kind of a unconditional plan where we can see what that site's going to look like and have, again, some kind of an input so that we make sure that we maintain our quiet neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you for signing in.
Hello, my name is Chris Humphrey. I live on 604 Eldridge Street. Along with my neighbors, the concern of the higher population density going into that property with the increase in traffic and all that, I see a lot of people walking along our streets, taking their dogs out, and there's no sidewalks on Eldridge Street. What would it take if something were to go in there to get sidewalks on both sides of the street to protect, my neighbors and everybody that walks up and down those streets?
Is there an answer from staff?
If there were to be a development there, we do require sidewalks, but only on the development side. We do have a non-motorized transportation plan that we do look at areas that need sidewalks and bicycle lanes and things like that. It could definitely be placed on that plan for future opportunities for grants, and if any road work is done or anything of that nature, it can be placed in. But it would definitely have to be placed on the development. That's part of a requirement for any development.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All right. Thank you all. Thank you to all who have provided input. We do greatly appreciate your engagement in this process. We appreciate it. At this time, I will open the floor for discussion among Planning Commission members. Commissioners, please share your thoughts, ask questions, provide any input on how we should proceed with this petition. Commissioner Gray?
Thank you. And thanks to all the residents who spoke and came out today. Appreciate you. And to the applicant, from, I believe, your presentation, you're open to having discussions and trying to come up with a win-win for this. Can you kind of talk about any timeline or the city that this pace would need to happen at? Is there any deadlines that we need to be considering in this? And that's if it was denied and we moved to that, right?
Yeah. If the Planning Commission would recommend denial on the straightforward zoning, The applicant, it would be really based on what the applicant wanted to do going forward. There would be no specific time requirement for them to turn around and place a conditional rezoning, just the fact that if he states that he would like to do that, we would not forward it to the city commission for the next step. We would hold it here at the planning commission level. Again, staff has discussed with the applicant, we'd be happy to work with the neighborhood, set up a meeting somewhere that would be a good location for all of them. Staff would be there to answer any questions, and then we would help the developer with anything they needed to put together conditional rezoning. I don't anticipate the need for a site plan per se, but locations, general locations of buildings and general density ranges, in conversations with the residents, what they would be concerned about as far as retail and commercial uses. So really, the timeline is based on what the residents can help us pull together for a meeting and what the applicant can pull together for an agreement.
And I'll give the question to the applicant, if you can step to the mic. I know you were saying that you have been working with Bronson about purchases. Are there any, timelines on that decision-making?
Yeah, well, so we'll discuss it after this regardless, but probably, our intent would be to get started right away with planning a meeting to talk about it. We're trying not to keep extending the time that we're dragging Bronson out on the decision. And I don't know that if we say, hey, we don't want it, if they're going to suddenly put a sign up and list it again, or if they're going to be like, all right, we'll just sit on it for longer. We don't really know their intent. They went to a lot of work to get us to where we could, so I don't know what they'll do. They might put a sign in front and say, next. But if we continue to say that we'll, we want to work on it, we do have another period of time we could extend it. It's just a couple months. They're a small little window, so obviously we don't want to drag this out another 6 months. Only because ours,
it's okay.
I'm talking with my hands, I'm sorry. So the biggest thing with that is going to be that, for us to decide, do we want to buy this or not, and close on this is entirely dependent on whether we can do something on it that isn't the way it's zoned now. So that is our urgency, I guess, is to have some plan, even if it's a sort of a commitment of, yep, with this rezoning plan, we like it, we're going to do this, we're going to send it up, it'll probably be something that might be good enough for us, to say. But obviously we can't even really come up with what I would consider a conditional plan until we've had some more input on it. I think the discussions in some of our meetings before was just like, let's go ahead and try for this T3, see if it's reasonable, and just do a straight T3. There's precedent for why it might work, but, obviously, we knew it could come back to needing to be more specific, and we were like, well, we hope we don't, because we don't really know, because we can't say, because we don't own it, but we will do that. We'll go to that process. So I think we would probably get right on it immediately. We'd probably try to plan something as quick as everyone could do it, and, I'm sure I can get some kind of general block planning, at least, to say this is what we'd like to do, and maybe say, hey, this is an area we definitely don't even want to worry about, we want to leave this alone, and maybe comfort some of that concern that we're trying to build up against fences and things like that. That's not our intent. It may be somebody else's intent. If we don't do this and somebody else buys it, then they'll have to argue that themselves, but that wasn't our intent, and what we were doing was not to do that. So we can move on it
in
pretty
general, you'd like to move this
We'd like to
along, you
move
don't want to
forward quicker.
drag it, but there's
No.
no actual deadlines that
Our
you're working
deadline is-
on with
our-
Bronson?
Yes, our deadline is only in that, they're going to get irritated with extending more and more, but other than that, that's not our thing. And so we would like to have it, we wanted to have it decided here within, by March, whether,
Sure.
At least from this level. But if it isn't going to happen, we've still got a little bit of time. But I would like to get through this process and maybe be able to reintroduce it within 30 days or 45 days or something, and reintroduce something through where we've had a meeting with them and everyone else.
And I'm curious, in listening to the conversation, reading through the packet, are you, I know we're talking about the up to so many units, 260 plus units, those kind of things. it sounds like there's some, and probably in your conversations with neighbors, as you have these conversations, this will come out. But in general, are you open to a lower number that kind of, looking for a sweet spot where people don't feel that the density is much of an issue?
Absolutely. I mean, we're open to that number. It's the problem, as was already mentioned, in cost to build things and do things. It wouldn't do us any good to put too low a number of units, because then it's just not financially practical. And honestly, all this is still technically about whether it's financially practical from everybody's point of view, really, in some way, shape, or form. If it's just too low a number and it doesn't work. But obviously, we also have the limitations of what even the city building requirements are going to do for us. So we can say that's how many will fit there. If they're like, well, you don't have enough room for drainage, you don't have enough room for this, and you don't have enough room for that, so you're going to have a number. So we're going to probably be limited. A lot of our things would be limited when we got to a real building plan stage anyway. We're not going to be able to point lights at the neighbors' houses, and we're not, going to have, there's certain things we wouldn't be able to do no matter.
Are you able to estimate those numbers? I mean, you have general ballparks where your break even is, where your, profit margin line is, as you talk 200 to 268 or 150 to 268? Is that something you can calculate prior to those discussions, or no?
Some of it, probably yes, but a lot of it is sort of like, if you were creating a business, you wouldn't want to say, how little could we possibly make to keep the lights on? So that's not what you're trying to do. Like if we only sold 10 products a week, we could just keep our lights on. So you don't normally think that way. So we're trying not to think that way. But obviously, again, maxing it out isn't necessarily good for everyone either. So I can't say we can do a calculation on it. We know what a rent could be. We know what our cost to build can be. We know what our cost to buy the property is. So there's a certain number, but I wouldn't want to do it at
certain range or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I can probably come up with that.
Is there a way that you could calculate your economics and then present a couple options or scenarios, hypothetically, if we end up in more community engagement, that shows, here's kind of typologies, different typologies, this is what it could look like, and kind of get some input and feedback on that?
Probably, yeah. If I understand what you're asking me, yes, I think so.
Okay.
I know, it's really difficult to have this
I know it's so
conversation, so
vague,
we
'cause it's really
appreciate
hard
you
to say.
engaging.
No, it's
We
fine, I
appreciate the residents' patience, but thank you so much.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Odell?
Well, thank you. I drive by that area a lot, too. I've seen it. It is a wonderful area to develop, and thank you for your interest in that, especially even down Territorial there, a lot of old empty businesses, and if we could just get some kind of spark over there to revitalize that area, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the residents all coming out. I knew something big was happening because it was hard to find a parking space on the way in, so I really do appreciate you all coming, so thank you. What it sounds like is we're almost there, but I believe that we do need this conditional to seal the deal. My question is if we're just voting on just the straight up zoning change, so if they have to come back with conditional, we have to vote no to approve this tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was.
Couldn't we table and allow them additional time to put in a conditional zoning application, and then we postpone? Thank you for the correction. And then that would allow them the appropriate time. We could put in a time period, and then we bring it back.
They can bring in the conditional rezoning at any point that they would like on the same application, but you would have to make a recommendation. There would be no reason for them to bring in the conditional rezoning if you made a recommendation to approve and approved
Right.
the straight rezoning.
So what I hear you saying is if we did postpone, there's no guarantee that they would bring it in.
Right. That
Okay.
would, yeah.
But then at the next meeting, when we brought it back onto the agenda, we then would vote to deny if that was still our.
No, you would actually, if you would either make a recommendation to approve, and you would either approve or deny the straight rezoning.
Okay, okay.
And that is staff's recommendation. The conditional rezoning, the applicant has already stated that they would be willing to come forward with that.
Yep.
Because of all of the input that you've heard today and that
Yeah.
was discussed, on top of the fact that there is a significant change in what can be done with the underlying zoning district and the proposed, even though I think some of the residents at least have expressed to me, they're not necessarily concerned about
Something happening.
something happening, and they don't necessarily want or don't want single-family residential.
Right.
They would be willing to consider, other housing options, but it's more of how the property is used and the traffic that it's
And
generating.
what I'm getting at is that though, for like, if we want, I do want them to come back with the conditional, I do want them to build there, it's beautiful, it's a great thing, but possibly privacy walls or some type of structures that would make it comfortable for everybody in the area to be welcoming to this is what it sounds like to me. Done.
Commissioner Godfrey?
I have a question for the city attorney.
Yes, sir.
For the proper protocol, we would go ahead and make a motion to approve this and then vote it up or down. Is that correct?
That is the request today.
I can't hear you.
That is the request for today by this matter being brought before you, unless you're choosing to go some other course of action, such as adjourning to another date. So if you're just
If we're
looking
just
for,
voting on the straight,
on the straight and narrow, it'd be a motion to approve,
and vote it up or down.
up or down.
Okay.
And that, and again, the motion to approve being in the affirmative, so
Yes.
we don't get any confusion
Right.
whether your yay is truly a yay or a nay.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any additional comments from commissioners? I would, oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to add that my one concern was this, and I'm in agreement, I want to see something done here too. It's just the not knowing if this was straight rezoned to T3 for long-term future, that we open the door for all of the approved uses under T3. That is kind of my biggest concern with this. So again, my kind of stance here is in line with what I think everyone else is saying. Certainly want to see something done, but there is that kind of long-term concern there. Commissioner Godfrey?
I would make a motion.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve petition R-0124 for the request to rezone the property located at 80 20th Street, currently zoned R1B, single-family residential, to T3 Neighborhood Commercial District.
I support that.
Okay, there's been a motion by Commissioner Godfrey. It's been supported by Commissioner O'Donnell. Are there any additional questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Gray?
Just going on the record, probably for all of us, that I will be voting this down for the reasons discussed during this meeting today, pending that conditional rezoning process.
Thank you. Any additional comments, questions? All right, let's vote.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No.
Can you
Mayor Banky?
please, if you vote no, please give your reason why.
The reason is I'd like to see more conditional return on that.
Mayor Banky?
Yeah, I'm not satisfied with what I've seen so far. I think it's important to protect the Cameron Drive neighborhood. This neighborhood's a long time established community in Battle Creek, and I feel that we've got to do it right on this particular piece of property. I think the developers can if they reveal to us where they've developed other property before. I think that's important to me. I think it's also important to understand whether this is going to be workforce development or if this is going to be a pilot development, so that the commission understands their responsibilities when it comes to that. With that being said, I'm voting no.
Commissioner Moten?
No. Just need to see more on the site plans, a little bit more specifics to the beneficial, what would be benefit of the community. More so if it's going to be residential or commercial too, just in that aspect, because I see it can go either way.
Commissioner Morris?
No,
Reasoning?
it's not transparent enough. There's so many unforeseens here. A lot of questions need to be answered, not only for us, but for the community. And it's one of the most important things that we can do is to study the subject before we just go out there and vote yes or no. We need to be more transparent.
Commissioner Dennison?
I vote no also. I guess my reasons are, I agree with everybody else here. I think that we need to know a little bit more about the density. I agree with all the neighbors. That's where you live, and if we have, this area is a lot more dense, they're going to have noise, there's going to be a lot more commotion. And one of the things in being in real estate is there is time. If Bronson wants to sell it, they'll give you the time. So my answer is no.
Commissioner Gray?
My answer is also no. And for the reasons I stated earlier, I think it's great that the applicant is willing to work on a conditional rezoning with the residents and interested parties in the area. That's very, very important. I also have some hesitations around that. As Darcy stated, the conditions can only be placed by the applicant. And so it's really going to have to be very clear and thoughtful process to make sure that everything is covered and agreed to by both parties, and that that will be a tough process, but I appreciate both parties wanting to go through it.
Commissioner Godfrey?
No. I think it's a great idea in concept. I think there's work to be done between the applicant and the neighborhood. I would like to see a much more detailed plan brought back to the neighborhood. And I'd like to see the neighborhood get much more involved in that they can bring us much more feedback to the Planning Commission before we approve going forward to the City Commission.
Commissioner Hughes?
No, as well. My answer is because if we approve the straight rezoning to T3 today, and if your interest goes away, there's no control beyond that to limit any of the approved uses under that designation. And I think that it's not entirely long-term harmonious with the existing uses in the neighborhood. I do support and suggest to seek the conditional rezoning and continue along that process. Okay. Then it is no, it does not pass. Thank you everyone who participated in this discussion. Your input is invaluable in guiding, responsible development in our community, and we greatly thank you all. That concludes.
If I could just ask the residents that are here tonight, I've given you all a business card. If you could email me or someone give me a list of emails so we can reach out to you to get a date and work with the developer to get something set up as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if the residents don't want to hang for the rest of the meeting, could we take a moment, a pause for the residents to leave?
Certainly. We can take a 5-minute recess here.
Thank you. We'll be in touch soon.
Here you go.
Yes. Appreciate it, yeah.
It's really refreshing to see it.
Commission sending this off to the City Commission. If you vote to do that tonight, the City Commission will have it on their March 4th commission meeting to vote to send this out to the neighboring communities, utility companies, transportation companies, and so forth. So we do have the consultant here tonight that will be presenting the plan, Eric Kehoe. He has been working on this plan since last October, and we've had several workshops and open houses to get input, and several meetings with steering committee members, the Lakeview Business Development, and different departments. So he is here to present it to you, and so we can get the final process to adopt the plan.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. So I am going to just walk through with you all a little bit of what we found and what our recommendations are for implementation in the LDDA Lakeview District. It's been an amazing, really fun process, challenging in the best ways because we're trying to figure out what we do with, something that was built auto-oriented in the early 80s, and now it's ready to be revitalized and reinvested, and how do we do that in the best way for the community, right? So just real briefly about me, I'm Eric Kehoe, so I'm a senior planner with Progressive Companies, formerly Progressive AE. So a lot of my work really focuses on redevelopment, land use planning, urban design, and that sort of thing. So yeah, if you go ahead to the next slide.
Oh.
At the bottom there, you should be able to, okay, there you go. So yeah, just real briefly here, the agenda. I'm just gonna go through quickly kind of the analysis that we did to lead to these recommendations, but then I want to spend a little bit more time on the recommendations and the implementation plan. So go ahead to the next one. And as you know, this is the Lakeview District. This is the study area, just for everybody's kind of familiarity. So mostly bounded by Capitol, Beckley, Glen Cross, and a little bit portion to the south, but then also M66. Go ahead. So, we started looking at what things were happening in the LDDA, right? And did a little bit of research on the history of the mall. Believe it or not, from the get-go, back in the late 70s, early 80s, the DNR, which is now under Eagle's purview, but at the time this was under DNR, they actually opposed the shopping center to be redeveloped due to the water quality issues that could be happening from that site, right? So now this process has kind of gone through. We did see an initial boom with the mall when it opened in the early 90s. 80s. That kind of excitement has declined over time, and obviously now we have aging retail, aging infrastructure, some vacancy within the mall site, and we're going to figure out, how best to target reinvestment in the area. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. There's a lot of research in the plan that you'd be able to see, but one of the things that we think is really interesting is that the parking that's required by the city, there's 3 times as much parking, surface parking in the LDDA than what's actually even required by code today. So obviously zoning has changed over time, but just something to keep in mind, there's a lot of opportunity for reinvestment if you think about those surface parking lots that are across the LDDA. Go ahead.
Isn't that trend changing, though, across the United States? A lot of municipalities aren't even requiring parking for developments.
Yep, and that would be a recommendation that we'll get to for sure. And keeping maximums and either reducing or eliminating minimums, especially in these types of environments, yep. So community engagement, we've reached at least 3,000 community members. 2,000 of them were through surveys and online responses, so either open comments, Facebook comments, and then our digital survey that went out to everybody. Then we also had 6 focus groups that were part of the process. Those were actually a mall site focus group. So we met with all of the owners on the mall site, and believe it or not, there's maybe 6 of them on the site. So met with them several times, met with governments that are surrounding, so the county and also the townships that are nearby. We had a mobility focus group and a housing focus group, and met with several of them on more than one occasion as well. So we also had virtual Q&As through the city's Facebook channel. 3 pop-up events where we just kind of marketed the survey and told people about the planning process. 2 open houses, one at the mall itself and then one next door in Horrocks. And then a walking audit, which is really fun. So that picture on the left there is some volunteers, some city staff, literally just taking a 1-mile loop on foot of the LDDA to kind of experience, like, what does it actually feel like to walk in this area, and what might we need to change if we do want to make it more comfortable for people to walk, right? And then if you want to head to the next slide there. So out of all this kind of data collection and community engagement, we really boiled it down to 3 key themes. So the things that we really want to target are placemaking, green infrastructure, and reducing car dependence. That was really the feedback from the community and from the data that we, kind of land use analysis. Placemaking to us is really creating places where people want to be and spend time outside of their cars. Green infrastructure is really looking at ways to leverage the existing creek that's there, but also a little bit more technical stuff related to like stormwater management and who owns the drainage areas that are over there, the retention ponds. How do we best manage those? And then reducing car dependence. Making it easier. One of the quotes that we have in the study is that, if I live in the apartment complex in the southern, kind of by ABC Warehouse, Target is maybe a 3-minute walk, but there's literally no sidewalk between where I live and the Target. It would be much more comfortable for me to get in my car and drive for 30 seconds to get to Target, right? So when we're thinking about healthy lifestyles, when we're thinking about quality of life, attracting new residents, right? I mean, even in that last discussion, I was thinking about the street and that they're on the 20th Street and thinking about if that felt a little bit more safe to walk along, maybe neighbors would be like, oh, it'd be nice to have a little corner store across the street. I could walk over, grab my things. So that's some of the challenges that we're facing, those decisions that happened in the 80s that were really auto-oriented. Now we're really working to try to undo those and attract more residents through quality of life. So, yep, let's keep on going here. So these are kind of the target locations. We do have kind of district-wide implementation recommendations, but these are the 4 sites that we really looked at. What could fit on the site? What's actually possible to do on the site? So if you want to go to the next one, let's get into some of the fun renderings here. So this is a site plan for Lakeview Square Mall, and like I said, working with the mall ownership, we tried to make a plan that's actually implementable for the current owners. So it's a little different because this isn't a city-owned site. We don't have carte blanche. We have to work with the owners a little bit to say what would actually pencil from a development standpoint. So what we're showing here is actually a partial demolition of the northern portion of the mall and a complete demolition of the Sears. So the biggest feature this is kind of the audacious, kind of bold vision of the site is to bring back the creek from where it originally was. So remove Sears and daylight the creek along, because Sears right now is currently sitting on top of where the creek used to run. So instead of having the culvert around the mall site, we actually completely open up the creek, create green infrastructure, but also a park, an actual park in the area. Because one of the things we found, besides the library, there's really the library and basically the cemetery site, there really isn't any other public space in this entire LDDA. So that's an amenity that we want to help create. If you want to go to the next slide.
Question?
Yep.
On that slide that we just lost.
Yeah.
The retention pond that currently is a little bit to the west of the stream that's buried under Sears.
Yep.
Would that be retained? It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, so the 2 retention ponds are kind of on the very far edge of the picture. Those are the ones that are currently existing, and we have those maintaining. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. This is just another image of what we're thinking about here. So existing mall site. We do propose relocating the theater. So one of the things that came up with the mall owners, just so you guys know, there's basically there's a company that owns the mall, like with all the kind of smaller outlet developments. And then there's an owner, the smaller kind of interior tenant spaces. And then there's a Sears owner, a Horrocks owner, a self-storage owner, and then the outlet, the pot shop owner. And there's completely different entities that need to work together here. We talked quite a bit with we'll call them the mall owner, so the person that owns the biggest portion of it. They have a 70% vacancy rate inside. But they do have some solid tenants, right? Like at the Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, the movie theater. So what we're showing is really trying to consolidate those strong tenants, remove some of the interior space that's basically obsolete, and replace that with a residential and a hotel component. So that's kind of what you're seeing. Yellow is residential and then a hotel component on the other side. Yep, you want to keep going there? So then this is a site plan. Now we're traveling south toward the target area. There's two options in the plan. This is kind of the more bold one, I would say. This is assuming that we would be able to somehow acquire the ABC warehouse and be able to do some work with that. This is really focused on leveraging the creek, because we would actually also move Whitmark Drive. So we would replace the Whitmark Drive. I don't know if you can picture it, but it kind of runs alongside the creek. We would swap that out with housing and try to put housing that like kind of has, views of the creek. And then fill the rest of the area in that's all parking right now with different types of housing. So townhouses, fourplex, cottage courts. And then we also saved room for what we were calling a neighborhood amenity. But we white boxed an area to potentially be a spot for a school, daycare, community center, that sort of thing.
And just quickly, Eric, there is a city-maintained walking path in that area, right?
Yes, yep.
Most people don't realize.
Yep, so if you look to the far west of the picture, you'll see a little indicator that says Brickyard Creek Trail. There's a trail that runs from Taco Bell down to Capitol along the trail, and it's
nice.
Honestly, it's nice, and this is actually what, when we first started, I think our design process was really centered on that. Like, how do we really maximize that? Because that's a great feature of the area, right?
It is.
So if you want to go to the next one, this is what a potential neighborhood would look like, replacing the current surface parking. And we really want to focus on traditional neighborhoods. So traditional neighborhoods to us, a lot of times I think of the neighborhoods that were developed before the cars were dominating, right? So, but with new housing. So it would be a walkable, a little bit more tightly packed, different housing options. So I know right now the city is overwhelmingly single-family housing. I think that's great for a lot of people, but there's also some people that might want more choices in the housing market, right? So how can we provide these different types of housing there? So we filled that in. Now we just got to get the ABC warehouse owner and the Target site owner and all them to make it happen. But we're gonna work on that.
It's possible.
Yep. The next one, just a kind of a light touch here, but this is North Capitol Avenue, right north of 94. So there's a lot of, I can't remember, is it Texas Roadhouse that's abandoned?
Formerly.
The former Texas Roadhouse, yeah. So we're showing just additional housing in there with a parklet.
That's off of Knapp Drive.
Yep, exactly, yep. And then if you want to scroll down a little bit, we're also showing some traffic calming measures. So right now on North Capitol, we have, I believe, 5 lanes when you get off at I-94, and it's way too much road for cars. So a lot of times when there's too much road for cars, we want to take that and move it toward road for people walking and biking. So the other thing to note, currently on the sidewalk in Capitol, the telephone poles are directly in the middle of the sidewalk. So again, when this was designed, probably close to 50 years ago, the engineers and designers were really only thinking about how do we move traffic through. They weren't thinking about how do people walk around and get around when they're getting off the bus, that sort of thing. And then this is the Riverside Drive intersection. So behind us is, if you go this way on Beckley, you would hit M66. To the left of us would be the Taco Bell. We really want to just support a better bus stop, but then also continue the trail north. So if you're getting off the trail at the Taco Bell, you can walk down the sidewalk, cross at the light, and then be able to continue on your way either on the Riverside bike drive, the bike lane, or through the potential park that would be at the Sears, former Sears. So what strategies do we adopt to get us there? So this is kind of where we're talking about implementation. How do we make this vision a reality? So if you go ahead to the next slide. I'll just go through real quickly some of the real first steps that we would want the city to focus on. And this is one of the things we'll be actually helping with, is to restart the DDA. So once the DDA is starting to capture revenue, they'd be able to either fund improvements directly or bond for improvements. And there's a lot of creativity that can go into that financing to make some more investments in the area. So that's really the next step on the DDA side, is to create a new DDA plan and figure out what the actual capture amount would be that they would be capturing from city, county, KCC, and then go to town and carry out some of these other ones. So you want to keep going here. Zoning reform. So this would be another strategy. We have a detailed memo that Darcy's team has. There's recommendations in the plan, but it's really to create that mixed-use, vibrant neighborhood that we're showing. It's really kind of backing into that through the zoning and making sure that the zoning allows that by right. So relaxing some of the setbacks that are over there, mixing uses in certain spots. Again, reducing or eliminating parking standards. Those are things that we're seeing across the country. And I think this is a great location for those types of changes, because it's, again, predominantly commercial right now. So it's a way to kind of start to change mixes and uses. So we're going to put together, we would recommend putting together incentive materials just so developers can have a good understanding of what they're getting into. So again, just having a packet of, here's our zoning, here's what incentives we have available for you, come build here. And re-inhabitation, so these would just be like, once the DDA is up and running, and the city staff could potentially assist with this, just very quick, low-cost ways to like get more people down there, right? Because they're really, like I said, there aren't many public spaces down there. How do we just get people there outside of their cars, not just in the buildings, but kind of seeing what's possible on the site? So you could do a little food truck rally, pop-up spaces like with Pop-Up Park. And then if we go to the next page here, that gets into what we would call tactical road design. So Glen Cross Road is a perfect example of where we could do this. Right now it's 4 lanes. It's built for the amount of traffic that Beckley Road has, but there's probably a couple hundred cars a day that go down it. So we could do a tactical road design where you measure how many cars are going before we do the road design, throw up some barriers and make half of it into like a bike path, pedestrian path, and then see what the changes are. So we've used hay bales to like do road diets. We've used potted plants, that sort of thing, but just some cheap and easy ways to show what the potential changes, how they might impact traffic. And then these are some of the other priority development policies that are available. Obviously, tax increment financing is a big one, along with the brownfield program. But then there's also MISTA and MEDC have grants that developers might be able to tap into. And we do make recommendations in the plan or through a technical memo to TED's staff about LIHTC. So in a LIHTC scoring, there are things that the location, in addition to kind of the developer's criteria, there's also things in the location that can raise a score. So having access to daycare is a big one. Being close to community services like a Michigan Works office, that sort of thing. So we do make recommendations on how these areas might boost their LIHTC score too. And then as you get into it more, there's more detail. Those are kind of the first things that we would recommend starting with. And these are some of the longer term strategic actions that we would take related to green infrastructure. You can keep scrolling through these. Placemaking and then car dependence on the third one. And those are outlined in the plan as well. But it's really focused on, it's really strategies that will make those visions of those designs a reality through policies and kind of attracting investment. So yep, that's kind of the end there. You can scroll down to the end. We wanted to make sure that we saw this picture because the guy in the picture is given the peace sign in the convertible, and we thought that's it's like a sign of things to come in the LDDA. So again, thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions of commissioners?
I have a couple. First of all, do you recommend any acquisitions of certain properties, major pieces of property along Beckley Road, so that the city controls the economic development, or do you recommend that we not go that route?
I would recommend that you do.
Okay.
I think acquisition would be a great way to jumpstart things. And we do go into that in a little bit more detail in the plan, because there are also some private roads down there that you might know of that are, we got feedback from the city staff that just, you can't maintain them because they're not publicly owned, but you also don't want to take them on because they have a lot of deferred maintenance. So it gets into the more negotiation of figuring out how we kind of do some horse trading around that. But short answer, yes, I think acquisition would be a key part of redevelopment.
All right, and then your recommendation on the capturing of some of the millages. Did you guys think outside the box and see what those entities, how they would react, or did you just write down the recommendation?
Well, no, we've been talking with that quite a bit with Ted, and we've worked on DDA plans kind of across the state. We're seeing a lot of negotiation between cities, counties, LDDA, community colleges. So there's definitely, it's going to be a discussion. The DDA can capture quite a bit because of when it was started to where the tax revenues are now. But there's also, it's clear that the other jurisdictions wouldn't feel comfortable just losing all of that. But if we're able to show kind of the opportunities that you could get through bonding and really raising the tax revenues in this area, then hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel there.
All right, my next one is kind of weird, but for some reason, there's like 4 or 5 different new restaurant establishments locating on Beckley. Got the Olive Garden, you've got the Jack in the Box, got the Jimmy John's drive-through.
Yep.
And finally, you have the Texas Roadhouse. What's driving that? Is it really that the number of cars still is up there on Beckley? Or is there another item that could be driving the development of those investments?
To me, that's a clear market demand driver. So and I spoke with a broker who does a lot of work in this area, and auto-oriented sites are in high demand along Beckley still. We took that into account on the site plan because we know that the mall owner is spinning off some of those outlot developments. And yeah, that's long story. I mean, short answer is, yeah, it's just market demand for auto-oriented drives, establishments. And you would know, we didn't make any very bold recommendations for changing the design of Beckley itself because that really is it's a through route, and there really isn't a reason, or it wouldn't make sense to try to turn that into a more pedestrian zone. What we do recommend is limiting access and actually turning it, so right now it's half a through route where you're trying to get through, and then the other half of the folks are trying to get in and out of places, right? So to make it safer, we'd actually limit access along Beckley, maybe add some medians here and there and make it more of a through route. But yeah, back to the drive-through thing, that's really just, it's market demand. Yeah.
Finally, did you on purpose not incorporate any automobile dealership?
Auto dealerships? In terms of future uses?
Yeah, on Beckley.
We didn't really consider that, I guess, as far as a future use, yeah.
I know that we have the Miracle Mile downtown, but at some point in time, I wonder if a car dealership would want to locate to Beckley.
Yeah.
With all the property available.
I mean, we don't really make strong recommendations on changing the zoning along Beckley. So if it's an allowed use right now, it would probably remain so. More of the zoning changes that we're looking at would happen in the parcels right off of Beckley and making that. You know, what we're really trying to do, there's so many corridors that look just like this, and we want Battle Creek to reposition so you're sticking out in the housing market a little bit and not going along with what the other corridors are showing. So while the corridor itself, like right along Beckley, might stay as it is, once you get into the neighborhood, that's really what we want to highlight and build off of. Yeah.
Do you think there'll be any casualties on the hotel motels that are being constructed? Will some of those old ones go by the wayside? Or do you think we'll see a continuation of new hotels efficient being built on Beckley?
I do think the way that I've seen the hotel market trend in this area, and I wouldn't say I've dug into the market of that super closely, but some of the older motels and hotels that are actually being used as basically housing right now.
Right.
I think our recommendation is to really formalize that. So figuring out ways to work with community services in the city and the current owners to, you know, if it's the housing is in demand in those sites and it's affordable housing that's in demand, then we need to really push for that and formalize it. And then we might see newer, I would call them Class A or just new hotel developments elsewhere, like on the mall site. Yeah.
Good report. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Yeah, I was just kind of interested on the Beckley Road traffic, how we would make those changes. To me, it's probably one of our most traveled and most accident-prone roads, especially up towards the Walmart. And I know that's not part of the area, but whatever we do there would affect all that traffic flow.
Yeah.
Recently, I was in another town somewhere in the country, and they only allowed entry onto a Beckley Road like that. You can only enter on the right to prevent traffic accidents. How would we come about that, or is that going to be on a different study?
Yeah, so it's not in the scope of our study, but I'm happy to talk about it because it's kind of a passion subject of mine. But these types of roads are the most dangerous roads in America. Okay, and the reason for that is because half the people are trying to use it like a freeway or just a through route. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
And the other half they're using it as a to route where they're trying to get to a place, right? When you're mixing to route and through route with each other, that's very dangerous. So our recommendation is to really, you kind of need to choose one or the other. We would want to push this more to a through route where there's less access to all these establishments. I wish I could show it, but there's
More like entry from the sides instead of off the main thoroughfare is what you're trying to say, with exit dumping back into Beckley Road, like a right-hand turn only type of structure that I've been seeing lately.
Yep, and there's quite a few designs where you've seen, and you can actually see it starting to happen already. So if you think about pulling into one of the businesses, a lot of times there's like a connection off Beckley where you can just kind of drive through the parking lots.
Yeah.
We would actually the long-term vision would be to formalize that and actually make that maybe like a 15-mile-an-hour road that connects all the businesses. But to get on and off of that little road, you need only like one or two access points. So Beckley is a through road, but then you have these kind of very calm streets to access the other businesses.
Similar to like an alley, open alley, surface road, yeah.
Yep.
The one other thing I'm really excited about, though, is the housing, especially over there by the ABC warehouse, empty parking lot with a lot of especially doctors on that side of town, specialists.
Yeah.
It would help with our elderly citizens to be closer to their doctors and convenient for them also. So I really like that idea back there. Is ABC Warehouse going to stay there, or you know, are they?
So we have an option in there that actually shows ABC Warehouse remaining. So that's kind of a site plan option too. It's going to get into discussions with the site owners and kind of seeing how that all shakes out.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions?
I just had a quick question regarding conversations with the business owners that are currently in the mall. I think you were saying there's 6 focus groups maybe or something involving them. And has there been conversations with them around this proposal to like remove Sears and create some living spaces in the back, et cetera? They know who they are. Thank you for sticking it out and staying with us all this time, as some people come and go out of the mall.
Yep.
But just your overall feeling and feedback from them?
Yeah, so we got feedback from the mall owner. The Sears has been up for sale, off and on. So they're looking to dispose of the property at some point. Their sales price is probably the question mark right now. The mall owner, we've gotten feedback with them specifically on these site plans. So I think they're excited that the city's thinking about them and wanting to work with them on something. We actually had an initial plan that looked at potentially doing some sports facilities, maybe pickleball courts and outdoor, indoor, like maybe a dome for activity. And they said, we've already kind of looked at that and it just won't pencil. We want to see housing on the site. So we reworked the site plan to show housing, and we're really happy with the initial vision, and hopefully we can get something implemented with them.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was going to say, I forgot the part, I was going to say, something's going to do with the indoor pickleball court somewhere along there, because.
Yeah. I think something in the mall, you can see that happening in the mall for sure. Yep.
All right, if there's no further questions for Eric, we do need to send this to the City Commission, so we'll be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Support.
What was your question?
So move what? Oh, the name of the motion.
Yeah, can you state the motion?
Motion to approve and to send to the City Commission the Lakeview District Corridor Plan.
Thank you. It's been moved and supported. Motion was made by Commissioner Benke. It was supported by Commissioner Morris. I think all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, moves on to the City Commission. Thank you, Eric. Excuse me. Any comments by the public? Seeing none. Any comments by staff and commissioners? All right, we are adjourned.
Why didn't you cough the other way?